20 to 4. Now, this is a worry because new data from the Child Poverty in Australia 2025 report released today by the Bankwest Curtin Economic Centre and the Valuing Children Initiative for the End Child Poverty campaign has revealed that now more than 950,000 Australian children are experiencing food insecurity, poor housing conditions and limited access to education and healthcare. Now, this is a 33% increase over the last 4 years. Professor Alan Duncan is the director of the Bankwest Curtin Economic Centre, and he joins me live on 6PR this afternoon. Professor, thank you very much for your time.
Really good to be with you.
This is very worrying. It's not a trend that we want to celebrate, Professor.
Not at all. Look, we've undertaken studies on the incidence of poverty, for some time now. But we were moved to look at some of the latest trends by what we've seen in WA and the rest of Australia to be a real increase in costs of living, on housing costs. But whilst we talk, in those terms, we often forget that this has quite significant adverse impacts on families and quite significant impacts on children, which is what that was the origin of this report. And yeah, it was quite confronting when we found that the number of children in poverty is approaching 1 million in Australia. Really not a number that we want to see.
No, which is about 104,000 in WA, 16.2% child poverty rate. So we're getting close to 1 in 5 West Australian children living in poverty, Professor.
Well, look, it's at the moment it's 1 in 6, and if trends were to continue in the same vein, it wouldn't be long before we were seeing 1 million children in poverty in Australia, and it wouldn't be long before we were seeing 1 in 5 in Western Australia. Now, the measure of poverty that we choose here is an income-based measure. We look at the share of households, people and children below 50% of a typical income once you take housing costs into account. But I think one of the concerning things for us is that this rising trend in an income-based measure of poverty, it triangulates with other measures of financial hardship, other measures of deprivation, families looking to have to make choices in what they spend their money on from 1 week to the next, families that are really struggling to keep a roof over their heads. And so whilst this is an income-based measure, if things don't turn around pretty soon, then we could be seeing the sort of numbers that you suggest.
Yeah, and you've crunched those numbers on what rents have risen by around the country over the past 3 years, Professor, and we know that firsthand here in WA, but it is eye-watering.
Oh, it's stunning. So nationally, if you look at typical rental costs, they've risen by about $125 over the past 3 years. But in some states, Western Australia in particular, the rates of increase have been even more pronounced. About 40% increase in rents, more than a 40% increase in rents in WA over 3 years. And if you trace back to the start of COVID, we've actually seen rents increase by $320 per week for a typical property. Now, $320 more on rental payments is $320 less that you have to spend on all of the other necessities of life. And so for us, it's not actually a surprise that we've seen a growth in poverty, and it is impacting, on all sectors of society, but particularly the concern is it's impacting on children. And we know that a childhood in poverty has a scarring effect for children as they move into adult life.
And that pressure it's also putting on support services, which are doing everything they can. I read some data today that on average 69 unaccompanied children and young people, those aged between 16 and 25, are competing for one available bed every night, Professor.
That's right enough. Yeah, it's confronting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so these numbers are not inventions. When we speak to frontline services, when we speak to groups that are providing emergency food relief, emergency shelter, then they all say that the findings in this report are really confirmations of what they're seeing on the ground.
Yeah, there's 180 organisations coming together now. The End the Child Poverty campaign calling on the federal government to legislate a child-centred definition of poverty so it can obviously give some more young Australians a go, a fair chance. What this country's been built on the back of.
Absolutely, yeah. One of the challenges when you don't have an explicit measure, you tend to, find an issue is forgotten. And so, whilst So standard measures of poverty across the entire population are reasonably regularly reported. You tend to find that child poverty measurement is far less prevalent. So we need to land on an appropriate definition of child poverty. We need to see that measure embedded into public reporting in a very sort of regularized way. And we ideally need to see targets to see the numbers reducing over time.
Professor, thanks for your time today. 20 to 4. Now, this is a worry because new data from the Child Poverty in Australia 2025 report released today by the Bankwest Curtin Economic Centre and the Valuing Children Initiative for the End Child Poverty campaign has revealed that now more than 950,000 Australian children are experiencing food insecurity, poor housing conditions and limited access to education and healthcare. Now, this is a 33% increase over the last 4 years. Professor Alan Duncan is the director of the Bankwest Curtin Economic Centre, and he joins me live on 6PR this afternoon. Professor, thank you very much for your time.
Really good to be with you.
This is very worrying. It's not a trend that we want to celebrate, Professor.
Not at all. Look, we've undertaken studies on the incidence of poverty, for some time now. But we will move to look at some of the latest trends by what we've seen in WA and the rest of Australia.